Hi, hello, my name is Ayla and welcome to my channel called A Comics. Here we are going to be discussing many different topics and I'm just going to pretend this is not my time trying to start this channel up. I hope this time I'm going to be able to keep up with it more. So I'm going to start off by telling you how the structure of this channel is going to be going. The way it's going to work is there's going to be a drawing in the background I'm doing, and according to the drawing that I am doing will be depending on the topic that we will be talking about. So this character that I'm drawing right here is a character from my own original series called Embrace Darkness, and her name is Gwen. Whenever I'm drawing her or other characters from this series, I'm going to be talking about vampire lore and other supernatural lore. Now, there's quite a lot of vampire lore to discuss, so I think I'm going to have plenty of content to be discussing with you guys. Because, we have things like your classic Nosferatu, your Dracula, which there's already plenty of different ways that Dracula has been told. And then you have your more modern, like Anne Rice. And then, of course, your even more modern, like a couple years ago. Oh, wait, was that a couple years ago? Wow. I'm old. Anyways, I was going to point out to Twilight, even though a lot of people really hate Twilight, but I still think it's very important to discuss because that is a different telling of vampires. And I'm not going to get into everything about that right now, but that will be discussed at a later point in time. So, let's dive in, shall we? Vampires have dated back to the Mesopotamian eras, which timelines between 3100 BC to 539 BC. They first began recording tales on their pottery, which documentation has been found on the excavated shards of their pottery. During this period, Lilith plays a large part in the origins of vampire lore as she's very deeply rooted in Babylonian demonology. She was a shape-shifting woman who formerly had been the first wife of Adam that preyed on pregnant women and babies. Lilith was also blamed for giving men unwanted dreams, if you know what I mean, and it took their life force as well. Eventually, the church adds her to the army of incubi and succubi who enjoy seducing and feeding upon their victims. So basically, you could call her the mother of incubi and succubi, which they are the first known iterations of vampires being blood drinkers. There are other demons and spirits in the Mesopotamian era linked to vampirism, such as the Ikumu. The Ikumu were creatures that not only resemble demons, but a spirit as well, because they are able to pass through walls. The Ikumu did not physically attack their victims, well, not only physically attack their victims, I should say, but they were also reported to take possession of them as well, so they would take their victims' bodies. Another vampiric being was called the Utuku or the Uruku, and I don't know if I am saying the names of these demons and spirits the right way, but I am trying my best. Now, I really could get into the details of these creatures and what they're like, but perhaps that's best to do further down the road, and I can go even into more detail on them. But for now, let's move on. And before we before we do, let me put a little disclaimer out there. Any names I'm going to be saying, any towns I'm going to be saying that are in another language, I do not know how to pronounce them, and I apologize for not knowing how to pronounce them. If anyone can give me how to pronounce these words, please let me know. I would love to educate myself further. Now, let's continue. Let's travel to Serbia in 1732 in a place called Medveda. 40 bodies were dug up, and out of those 40 bodies, 13 were identified as vampires. Now, how did they know? Who had this information? Well, a doctor named Dr. Johannes Fleckinger had been sent out to this town to record the strange phenomena. These villagers believed because they had fresh blood around their mouths and their bodies remained free of decomposition that they must be vampires. Obviously. And to be more specific, They pried the rib cage open of all 13 of these bodies, and every single one of them had fresh-looking lungs, spleens, and livers. One of these bodies had been a mother who died about 2 months prior, and Flukinger described that her skin looked still quite vivid. Obviously, they rose from the grave and consumed innocent people. Serbian villagers also reported that there had been a soldier who had settled within their village months prior, became mad, started biting people and cattle and other animals, and they ended his life by driving the stake through his heart because it was their custom. That was the end of his reign of terror, and that was what was written on Flukinger's report. I don't think he would have ever imagined that his report would become the rhetoric and the narrative that spread all across the world, but it did. And it probably had to do with the fact that he thoroughly, and I mean thoroughly, documented the situation that happened in Serbia. Before 1730, there was no such thing as vampires in Europe. Thanks to the peace treaty of Passarowitz, the beautiful merge of cultures and folklore happened. The documentation that Flukinger created had been written, translated into several different languages, and it spread like wildfire. I'm sorry. It was from there where more modern vampire lore started coming about, and what has influenced creators of vampire lore in our current media today. What I find interesting is that vampire lore has started simply because people did not understand the process of decomposition of a body. Decomposition is not absolute, and it varies greatly by environment. Just as these people did not understand how certain diseases worked. The mass hysteria of vampirism in the medieval times in Europe started because there's a massive rabies outbreak. Rabies is a disease that is not just an attack on the body, but it is also an attack on your mind. And because of that, it displays a lot of symptoms that are related to vampires. And then not only that, but you also had things like schizophrenia and sometimes even tuberculosis, where these people often confuse that to vampire attacks. So now finally, these people feel like they have the answer thanks to this documentation that has come from Serbia. All of their questions have been answered, and they went ham for it. And, I don't mind because we have some pretty cool vampire stuff today that I enjoy reading, and I enjoy writing lore that derives from all these this mix of everything. So, with that, I think that concludes the origins of vampire lore. Thank you for watching / listening, and I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day.